Today's episode is the 19th episode of the 2Close2Call podcast. Because of this, Pags and I discuss our favorite number 19s of all time, and we have to reach a little deep to come up with our favorite athletes to wear this number. We also discuss how number 20 is going to be difficult for us because we each have multiple ideas that we're already considering. After this, we then get into NFL Combine talk. Pags discusses a little bit of his background and how he prepared for William & Mary's Pro Day, and specifically the 40-yard dash and bench press and things along those lines. We then get into a little bit of a gambling segment that I think you guys are going to like. We discuss the over-under for the 40-yard dash time for 8 of the athletes taking part in the festivities this weekend. Let us know where you guys think we're going to end up. We're going to have those on the social media. The over-under, we'll see how many you guys can get right out there. After this, we jump into a little bit of Philly sports talk where we discuss the Flyers' Wayne Simmons trade and if this is them throwing in the white towel for the rest of the season. We follow this by discussing the Sixers and how we're kind of in a holding pattern here because with Joel Embiid and Boban both out, we're not going to be able to see this team at full strength and really determine what we have. We finish up with some Philadelphia Eagles talk and the big news of Nick Foles not receiving the franchise tag. We discuss what this means for the future of the roster and some key decisions they have moving forward with Nelson Aguilar, Jason Peters, and Timmy Jernigan. We conclude this episode with a phenomenal interview with a friend and fellow Lehigh Mountain Hawk, John Adams. He was a starter in March Madness in the game in which Lehigh beat Duke, and C.J. McCollum was able to help upset Austin Rivers and the Plumlee brothers and the Duke Blue Devils. I think you guys are going to like that discussion. It's pretty crazy some of the things they went through in regards to that March Madness and how it still gets brought up to this day. But as always, this show is brought to you by the Ram King. Visit www.theramking.com for all your t-shirt needs. Guys, when you visit that website, type in the 2Close2Call podcast and where you heard it from, and you guys will receive a little bit of an extra discount. We're also going to be working with the Ram King moving forward for more promotions and some giveaways. We're working on a little bit of a design for a shirt here in the near future that I think you guys are going to like. Visit the website, reach out for all your t-shirt needs. If you guys know anybody who's thinking about a new group project and they need to show some swag, visit www.theramking.com. But without further ado, here's episode 19.
Coach, you were 5-79 last year. Why the playoff talk?
Well, we made a couple of key trades, and we got the funk.
Oh, well, glory be, the funk's on me, Bobby.
Keep that funk alive. Keep that funk alive.
Well, it's 1975, and we just be keeping the funk alive.
Aloha and hello and welcome to the 19th episode of the 2Close2Call cast. I'm your co-host as always, Miho, here with the homie Pags. What's going on, my man?
What's good, homie? Just chilling.
Another day in the books.
Absolutely. 19. Craziness.
Right? And when this episode airs, it's going to be the wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month.
First of the month. Love it.
Oh, man. But like we mentioned, 19 already. So as we do for every episode, we give our favorite athletes to wear the number of episodes. So 19, right off the top of your head. I know I'm jumping you here, but who do you got?
Yo, 19 is tough. There were not many people out there with 19, but I saw one that caught my eye, and I was like, you know what? I really enjoyed watching this guy play. It was Scotty Hartnell.
Yes, Flyers, baby, with that red flow.
Yo, I have a special spot in my heart for the 2010 Flyers, and Scotty Hartnell was a main component of that team, and I'm going to go with Scotty Hartnell.
Caught a little bit of that Ryan Howard syndrome because at the end of his career, he was making a little bit too much for his performance, and people wanted to run him out of town. But when he was in his heyday, in his prime, living in front of the net, especially pissing off those Pittsburgh Penguins, that was fun to watch.
looking like Yukon Cornelius from the freaking Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
There you go, right? That red flow.
Oh, I loved it. Who you got?
So I'm actually going with a former Philadelphia Philly, and more so because of the reason that I love his barbecue nowadays, and that is Greg Luzinski, the Bull, who manned left field for the Phillies for almost a decade, and I believe is on the Wall of Fame for the Phillies, and if not, he's in the Wall of Fame for broadcasting, because I love it when they get Kruk to go down there and work with Luzinski, and they're eating all the messy barbecue and things like that. I never saw him play, but I love his barbecue, so I'll go with Greg Luzinski, number 19.
What is his barbecue brand? What's the name of it?
Bull's Barbecue. It used to be down the right field line, but now they have that new Fanatic Center down there. Have you seen that one yet? That's pretty cool with all the kids running around. So they moved it to the left field corner, and it's got a new setup right there, a little outdoor area to hang out in, dude, and it is very good.
Sounds awesome. That's a good pick. That's a good find by you.
Like you mentioned, man, I know you said for 17 was hard, but 19 actually was not the easiest. Number 20, we have already debated. We have a handful that we're going to have to pick from here, so we may need to give you more than one next week.
Yo, 20 is two of my favorite football players of all time, and it's going to be tough.
Maybe we'll flip a coin live on the air to see which one Pags goes with.
There you go. Good call.
But speaking of football, that's basically the sports entertainment of the weekend in the NFL. It is time for the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. The sports world convenes on Indianapolis, and all the good stuff is spilt at the Steak and Shakes afterwards. Listening to a Philadelphia Eagles beat write reporter, he was saying that at 12 midnight, Andy Reid and Marty Morningweg would go to Steak and Shakes for milkshakes every night on the dot.
That is not surprising at all.
Right. So you don't actually learn. You don't actually learn anything at the Combine. Everything's spilled over adult beverages afterwards, and they're hole-in-the-wall joints because these huge billionaires like Jerry Jones walk into these corner shops and tend to enjoy themselves.
That's awesome. I can't imagine what it's like there with all those guys mulling around town. I bet it's crazy.
Right? Now, you say you can't imagine, Pags, but you actually have a little bit better of an idea than most of us, because I know, unfortunately, in your playing days, you didn't get the invite to Indianapolis, but you did kind of go through the training and the pre-work involved for some of those drills for William and Mary's Pro Day that you were involved with. Why don't you take us through and the listeners through a little bit of what you guys went through to prepare, and how technical they are in all these drills and things along those lines?
It's really crazy how you have to take your mindset out of football, basically. When you decide to do this, you decide to jump all in on the pro day, you're going to work out for NFL scouts. You have to take your mind off football, because 90% of it isn't football. It's all, like you said, technical shit. And that was the most frustrating thing for me was, I'm going to go there, I'm going to fucking run, I'm going to run as fast as I can, I'm going to lift, I'm going to do whatever. And then you get there and you're like, I'm not as good at these things. And the guy's like, well, you can shave a second off by doing this, doing that, doing this. Basically, just learning how to run and become kind of like a track star is kind of what you're focusing on at that point. It's crazy.
Did William and Mary help prepare you for this, or was this something that you and the other guys who were hoping to make it kind of put together on your own?
My roommate, Jake Tranton, he was going for linebacker, and Marcus Hyde, who was a defensive end, and my buddy Alex Gottlieb, who is a tight end, actually had a couple stints with the Cardinals and the Lions. We all drove to Richmond, about an hour away, 5 days a week, and we trained with a guy up in Richmond for 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours of just madness. And this guy was a psychopath. I'm talking, he would drink his protein shakes, but he would throw pre-workout in. He's like, I got to keep going. And it's like, oh my God, that's got to taste terrible. It's crazy how much effort you put in for maybe, if you put in the clock about the amount of time you're working out, maybe 4 minutes. It's nuts.
Did they take you through any of the mental aspects that we hear about, some of the interviews or the Wonderlic test, things like that? Did you have to do that side of the Combine at all?
we actually took the Wonderlic the night before. Everybody that was having it, the scouts were in town, so we came in and we did the Wonderlic before. And my buddy John Grimes, who's played for the Texans the last 6 years, he got a lot of interviews, not so much the rest of us schmucks, but he got a lot of the interviews. The Wonderlic was crazy. You get like 5 minutes to answer as many questions. There's 50 questions on there. So when you see Ryan Fitzpatrick gets a perfect score, that means he answered every question in the 5 minutes and got them all right, which is crazy. Because you have like this like attitude. You're like, do I want to answer these fast or do I want to answer these correct? And I mean, I ended up getting like a 36, 37. So I was proud of myself.
You did pretty good.
They make you feel so short. Because they make you take a deep breath in, breathe everything out, and they shrink your shoulders down. And it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm 6'3", and they're like, nope, it's looking like 6'2" and 2/8. I was like, huh? I've never had that.
Going off of that, I figured we'll play a little game here, and what I think is the most television-worthy or newsworthy drill at the Combine, which is the 40-yard dash that we touched on.
Absolutely.
I have 9 names here that we're going to run through, and where Vegas has put the over-under, I'm going to shoot those off at you, and right off the top of the head, I'm going to get your response. We're going to put these on the social media to hear from you guys, the listeners, and we'll see how many of these we can get correct.
I love it.
All right, we're going to start out with the most important 40-yard dash, and that is Rich Eisen, who runs every year for St. Jude to raise money, and it's become a little bit of a spectacle after he just hopped out there the first time for fun, but his career best in bonus information for you, Pags, is 5.94, okay? The over-under this year is set at 5.97.
Ooh, 5.94 is impressive in a suit. I'm not going to lie. He actually puts on cleats, correct?
I think it's evolved to where he's now in athletic gear.
Oh, so he's not even wearing a suit anymore.
I don't think so.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to go over just based off of his interview with part of my take. He doesn't sound too confident about this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm taking the over. I think he's going to be over 6, and his best days are behind him here. Getting to these next 8 individuals who are in the best shape of their lives, most likely. I was
going to say, these guys are.
We'll start with quarterbacks, then we'll head to defensive line, and we'll finish with a couple of running backs. But I have 3 quarterbacks for you. The first one, probably the most recognizable name on the list, and that is Kyler Murray. His 40 was actually set at 4.42, which is moving for a quarterback.
Oh, man, that's a tough one. You know, I'm going to go over. Just because I don't think he had enough time to train for all this, I'm going to go over.
Oh, man, right? 4.39, 4.41. That's quick.
Dude, that's fast.
Right? I'll take over as well. I think he may be in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s.
I was thinking 4.45, something like that.
We're both taking the over on Kyler Murray. The next gentleman on here out of Ohio State is Dwayne Haskins, with his over-under set at 4.80.
I'll go under. I think he's got a lot to prove. And I say 4.77, 4.78.
I think we're going to agree for a second time here. Now, he's more of a pocket He's more of a pocket passer, so we haven't seen him move, but something in me is telling me that he's going to scoot a little bit better than 4.8, but he could just be big and lumber down there, and we could both be wrong.
Does any part of you I'm agreeing with Pags, I am fucked?
A little bit. As well as an Ohio State guy I kind of have to root for now. I'm like, no, that's just a double whammy. This next one I think we may have a slight disagreement on is Trace McSorley out of Penn State. I've seen multiple numbers, but the one on the site with all of these to stay consistent has him at 4.55 for the over-under.
I'm going to go under. I think he's going to move. He's a quick little dude. I'm not saying really under, but I think under 4.55.
Yeah, there you go. Our first disagreement. I'm going to go over. I have Trace in the 4.6s, high 4.5s. I think if he's in 4.52, that's faster than I think he plays on film.
I think he's going to fly around.
So that'll wrap it up for the quarterbacks. Like I mentioned, we'll head now into the defensive line here, where we'll have 3 more names, the first of which, Josh Allen, top prospect out of Kentucky. He has an over-under at 4.60.
4.6 is fast for the guy his size. I'm going to go over.
All right, I'll take the under in this one. I think he's going to be one of the quickest defensive ends on the board, and he's going to surprise people with his combine statistics and just further stamp his mark as a top 5 pick.
Dude, he's a beast. I watched him against Penn State in the bowl game. This guy is an animal.
He can move. And another guy who I think is right there with him and may challenge is Michigan's own Rashawn Gary, who's with the linebackers, it looks like, when it comes to combine workouts. So if you're looking for him in defensive ends, I don't think you'll see it, but he's kind of a 3-4 hybrid on the outside there, could play in any scheme, and they have him at a 4.65.
I'll go under. He's going to move. I think he's going to show out.
I think he's going under as well. I'm with you. I think he's going to be in the low 4.5s, and he's going to be one of these guys like Peppers a few years ago who was just a ridiculous athlete and go from a mid-first round pick to a top 10, for sure, top 15 guy.
Absolutely. And he's blue. He's your guy.
That's it, right? And the lone D tackle we have on the list is Dexter Lawrence at 5.00 out of Clemson.
I'll go over. He's a big dude.
Right? Let's see if he can move. And just because you took the over, I'm going to take the under. How's that for some expertise for you, right?
There it is.
Oh, goodness. So 2 running backs to wrap it up here, and this will be your combine talk for the day. But Bryce Love out of Stanford has a low time here of 4.38. Apparently they think he's going to scoot.
I'm going over. I don't think he is explosive as people think.
I think that's right around where he's going to finish, 4.39, 4.40. So I'll take the under and go 4.37 just because
there it is.
With the ankle fully healthy and in gym shorts, he may be able to surprise us with his straightaway speed.
I like it. Some differences.
And the last guy on the list, Josh Jacobs, running back from Alabama, potentially rumored in some mock drafts to be to your Philadelphia Eagles at 25. They have his over-under at 4.50.
I'll go under just because Philadelphia Eagles, boom.
There it is. And because of that, I'll go over for the same reason. Because I think he's going to, if he goes over, he'll definitely fall and be available at 25. But if he shows out in like that 4.45 range, he's going to be one of these top backs taken and won't be there for him.
Damn it.
But those are the guys we have on the over-unders. Like we mentioned, we'll put those on our Instagram page. We'll get your thoughts. We'll kind of keep track on how we're doing, maybe win you guys a little bit of money, or if you're Pags, hopefully not lose too much money.
Come on, go with the opposite of me, everybody.
Under my tutelage, you will grow from boys into men, from men into gladiators, and from gladiators into Swansons. Behold, the Swanson Pyramid of Greatness. I've been developing the Swanson Pyramid of Greatness for years. It's a perfectly calibrated recipe for maximum personal achievement. Categories include capitalism, God's way of determining who is smart and who is poor. Crying, acceptable at funerals and the Grand Canyon. Rage, poise, property rights, fish, for sport only, not for meat. Fish meat is practically a vegetable. Haircuts. There are 3 acceptable haircuts. High and tight, crew cut, buzz cut. Are the scissors broken in your house, son?
Welcome back to the Too Close to Call cast. This next segment will be our Philly Sports Talk segment before we get to our interview to end the episode here, number 19. The news on the Philadelphia Flyers front, since we were able to talk to you guys last here on the podcast, was they move on from Wayne Simmons. They move him to the Nashville Predators to be reunited with Coach Peter Laviolette. In return, they get former first-round pick Ryan Hartman, as well as a fourth-round pick, which turns into a third if the Nashville Predators win a playoff series, which everybody thinks they should at the very least. However, they haven't been playing good hockey lately. So hopefully Hartman in a third. Right now, Hartman in a fourth. But right off the bat, Pags, what are your initial reactions to moving the Wayne train?
Don't get me wrong. I'm going to miss Wayne more than anything. He was one of my favorite players in Philly. But looking at it from a Flyers aspect, you had to get something for him. I think they did it a little too late. They probably could have got something from him a year or two ago. Overall, good trade. Gonna miss Simmons more than anything. But I'm happy for him. I hope he makes a little cup run here for Lavi and the boys down in Nashville.
Right, I'm getting sick of the people who used to be Flyers going elsewhere and winning cups, like Richards, Carter's, teaming in. Like, come on, what the fuck? If you're going to win it in Philadelphia.
We're becoming one of the are we not the longest drought since
I don't think we're the longest, but we're certainly up there, that's for sure.
Oh, that gets frustrating after a while.
So the interesting thing here is reading back to some of Ron Hextall's comments right before he was let go, and you can only assume that Chucky 2 Trades, Chuck Fletcher, the new GM, is thinking this as well, but there were multiple comments around how this team needs a little bit more toughness or a little bit of jam, and those were the things that Wayne Simmons was supposed to be known for. So kind of taking a high-level look at this, removing our Philadelphia heart and soul, you think if you're bringing in Ryan Hartman to improve on your jam, and he showed a little bit of that in his first game by crushing that dude in Buffalo and getting a standing ovation. So if he can bring energy like that night in and night out and be a third liner, you need good third liners to win Stanley Cup playoff series.
Simmons was that, but he wasn't being productive this year, man. Like, JVR has just as many goals as him, and they played significantly different amounts of games. It's just, you had to move on from them, and I think they're doing it the right way. I think they have a nice young nucleus around them, and in a couple of years, we're going to forget about all this and get ready for playoff runs.
Yeah, and it was a crazy trade deadline. There were 32 players dealt in over 20 trades, so the market there for like a first or second round pick, like you mentioned a few years ago, just never manifested itself, and I think they got the best of what they could from Wayne Simmons, kind of understanding that they weren't going to re-sign him, and it's still a definite long shot to make the playoffs, but still alive.
Still confident. There's still a percentage. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. They have 3 games here before we'll talk to you guys again next week, and they're going to need at least 5 out of 6 of those points. Brian Elliott going Thursday. We're finally going to see Cam Talbot on Friday, to be determined Sunday, but who knows, man? They're playing good hockey, and if they keep it along, they have a chance.
The shitty part is, in hockey with this 1-point rule, it's going to be almost impossible to even make up this ground.
Yeah, that's the issue with these games going to overtime and things like that, so it's definitely going to be tough. But one team who plays in the Wells Fargo Center that is going to make the playoffs, now it's just a matter of what seed they're going to get and who they're going to play, is the Philadelphia 76ers. They survived a scare this week when Boban took a spill and went down and his minutes replacing Joel Embiid. However, the MRI came back negative, and it looks like he's only going to miss about a week or 2 here. The news on Joel Embiid is about the same. They're taking the safe approach and probably going to hold him out for at least another week, which these games against the Thunder and Warriors coming up doesn't really give a positive outlook to those anymore.
No, and we don't have nothing to talk about with Embiid and Westbrook. It sucks. Hey, if Joel's going to be all rested up, ready to rock in the playoffs, I'm all for it. If they can take one of these games in the next 2, I'm good. But it sucks for the people that paid all this money to go see the Warriors play, and our best player's not even going to be on the court.
Yeah, right, and hopefully it'll even be competitive because our best player's backup isn't even going to be on the court. So
yeah, that's true.
They're kind of in a holding pattern here for the next week or 2 till they get fully healthy, and you can kind of begin to examine them again on how they're implementing and integrating as a team. So we'll keep you guys updated there, but not much to talk about. But in Philadelphia Eagles talk, Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson come out at the Combine saying they are not going to franchise tag Nick Foles. They're going to save the $25 million, let him become a free agent, which ultimately I think is the right move, but certainly one that was argued about around here.
It sucks to see Nick leave, but you knew it was going to happen, and my bold prediction is becoming alive with the Jacksonville Jaguars getting him and making the playoffs, but I hate to see him leave.
I know. I think he's going to end up down there too, but the dark horse team to look out for could be the Dolphins, moving on from Tannehill. But either way, I think he ends up in the state of Florida.
Interesting. So what else are we looking at with the offseason with the Eagles?
So the next couple of moves you need to keep an eye out for, and one of them in particular before the calendar league year begins on March 13th is Nelson Aguilar. So he's on his 5th-year option of his rookie deal where he's supposed to get $9.5 million. And the reason the 13th is important is because that money becomes guaranteed on the first day of the new league year. So they could cut him or trade him before that and have to pay $0 on their investment. And some reports out of the Combine are that they're open to doing so. What are your thoughts there on moving on from Aguilar?
I would be upset if they cut him just because he's a proven productive player in the last 2 years. I would not be opposed to us trading him because I think, like we talked about in the last episode, that leaves us the door open to get Antonio Brown. So I'm all for that. It just depends on what are you looking to get back for Nelson Aguilar in a trade? Draft picks?
Absolutely. That would definitely be what you would get back for him. So let me throw a couple scenarios at you here, and you can tell me which door you're ultimately going to take. How's that sound?
Oh, I like it.
First one is they trade him for, I don't know, second-round pick, second and a sixth, second and a seventh, whatever you deem market value. They don't get screwed,
Right.
But it's nothing crazy. Door number 2, they cut him and bring back Golden Tate for the money that they would have owed him at $9 million.
Okay.
Door number 3 is they extend Aguilar and lower his cap hit for this year to, $2-3 million, but he's now signed for the next 2 to 3, 4 years for his second NFL contract.
Honestly, all three of those doors sound good to me.
Those are the 3 options that they're debating right now internally.
I'd probably go the second route with Golden Tate. Give Golden Tate that money, move on from Aguilar.
Yeah, see, I think I'm going to take door number 3, man. I know Golden Tate's resume speaks for itself, but he's looking at age 30. Aguilar's still 25, a little bit more of a speed aspect to him. Aguilar was doing well in the slot before Tate got here, so I certainly see how people have said Golden Tate, and it's a debate I've heard across the Philadelphia region, but I think extending Aguilar and continuing to go with Aguilar, Jeffrey, and some speed wide receiver who you sign is the move.
I still kind of think Golden Tate was the one that brought up that Wentz shit. So you might be right down. You might be right on with that.
I haven't heard that one yet, but he's one of 3 decisions that they're ultimately going to make here, and the final 2 aren't as trade-worthy. It's more just re-sign for less money and an extension or cut and move on from, but those 2 names are Jason Peters at left tackle and Timmy Jernigan at defensive tackle. Combined, they're owed like $25 million, and you can cut them for saving about $22.
I would keep both of them. I think Jernigan.
You can't keep them at that
finally,
cap hit, though.
No, they got to work out some kind of deal there. I would love to keep Jernigan. As players, let me preface this by saying, as players, I would want to keep both of them. I understand you got to make the money work. Jernigan, being healthy and all, I'd probably move on from him before Peters, just because Peters always grades out as one of the best tackles. If he can prove to stay healthy, which I understand is a humongous if,
how many
you're
games?
not going to get a better tackle.
How many games do you think Peters would give him next year?
I guess 10.
Is that enough for $10 million?
Probably not.
That's your problem.
Probably not. I know. That's why I prefaced it by saying if he's healthy. But I guess there's no way of knowing that.
I agree. So ultimately,
you're not going to get a better player. That's
right?
the problem. And he's the leader in the locker room. It's just like he's like my Wayne Simmons, where I'm like, I don't want to get rid of these guys. I love these guys, but that's just my fandom talking.
I'm with you, man. Ultimately, predicting the future for me, I see them trading Aguilar. I see them releasing Timmy Jernigan with hopes of bringing him back, but I think somebody else will pay him. And then I do think they restructure Peters for 1 more year. They give him an extension, so it looks like he's going to play 2 more years, but really it's for this year. And out of the $35 million that's due for those 3 guys, they walk away with about $20 to $25 million in cap space, which then they can use on other needs such as linebacker, corner, offensive line, pretty much the entire team.
Elliot Shore-Parks, I was listening to him talking. He said it's almost like known in the locker room Peters is going to be back next year.
But I just don't see how it happens at $12 million, knowing Howie Roseman and how he operates.
Howie will work it out. Yeah, Howie will work it out. And I think Peters is willing to make this place his home forever until he retires, which I think will be next year.
I agree. I think he's going to give him one more ride here. But that wraps up our NFL talk and our Philly sports talk. Now, Pags, we'll touch quickly on the Alliance and our Fantasy Football League. Going into our Week 3, we are 1-1. I believe I was the only one of the two to make moves. I'm going to start both of my moves, Mettenberger and D. Ernest Johnson, I believe the guy's name was, for this weekend. And I don't believe you have any changes to make, having kicked my ass.
No, I am sticking to it. 100-plus points last week. Let's get it again, boys. My boy Jaquan Gardner, AAF Player of the Week. Let's do it again, boys. You see that Trent Richardson, what he has on his mind when he's on the field? Did you see that little quote there?
No, what do you say?
He goes, "I'm thinking about my kids." And I'm like, well, if you don't get a paycheck next week, you're not really thinking about your kids. You're thinking about yourself. He's thinking about his kids when he's running for 4 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I love it. Anyway, now we're going to transition into our guest for the week. We have an interviewee back with us here for episode 19, a friend of mine and fellow Lehigh Mountain Hawk, John Adams, who was on the basketball team for 4 years and started in the game of Lehigh beating Duke in March Madness. So we're going to get into a great conversation around that and some of his other experiences.
Absolutely. I think you guys are going to really love it. He is a great guy, and he has a lot of insight into old March Madness coming up.
That's it. So, as always, guys, thanks for listening, and now we'll get to our interview.
When it comes to government hearings, the only type of witness I enjoy being is a hostile one. That's why I intend to answer every one of their questions with a question.
Were you aware that all of the entertainment and food was provided by rec center teachers?
Would I have stayed if I knew that?
I don't know. Would you have?
Would you have?
No, I wouldn't have. Did you hear Leslie make any promises?
What constitutes a promise?
A quid pro quo?
Oh, do you know Latin?
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
Are we done?
Now joining us on the 2Close2Call cast, like we mentioned, a fellow Lehigh Mountain Hawk, a 4-year contributor to the men's basketball team. He joined Lehigh out of San Jose, California, where his senior year ended with the pinnacle of his career, and that was Lehigh upsetting Duke in March Madness in one of the greatest upsets ever known in college basketball. Everybody please welcome my friend, John Adams.
Hey!
And the crowd goes wild.
That's
Just
it,
like
man.
a Lehigh.
So, thanks for coming on with us, man. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Super stoked to be on here.
Yeah,
Glad to have some people listen to me talk about, Lehigh days.
Expanding the listeners, getting people on, obviously, with, the turn of the calendar heading to March here on Friday when this episode will release. We figured your college experience being to 2 March Madness tournaments was as relevant as anybody. So, once again, man, we appreciate the time.
Yeah, of course.
So, you end up at Lehigh, dude, from San Jose, California. First of all, had you ever heard of Lehigh, and how the hell did they end up on somebody like yours radar out there at Archbishop Mitty?
First of all, I don't really know, but I'll dive into how I got there. But yeah, so, senior year, being on the AAU circuit, you're playing, you're trying to get exposed, you're trying to bust your ass to get a scholarship. And things were going pretty well for me. I had a couple things lined up at, California schools. Santa Clara University, at Pepperdine, at Santa Barbara. I had a lot of UC schools looking at me. I was pretty much confirmed to, nonverbal commit to go to University of Santa Clara, but the head coach ended up retiring. The new head coach kind of came in from UCLA and had a bunch of recruits that he wanted and, brought them in. And,
Right,
it was kind of back to the grind. So here I am without a school in sight and, still, just playing basketball. And my head coach at the time, Brian Eagleson, pulls me aside and says, "Hey, John, a couple of guys from Lehigh want to talk to you." And I was like, haha, really funny, because at the time, there's a school in the Bay Area called Lehigh. No shit. the high school. And I was like, funny joke, like, I'm not going to talk to these coaches from Lehigh, so, like, whatever. And he's like, no. This guy named Matt Logie wants to talk to you. They love what they've seen. And I never heard of them. I never, like, spoke to them on the AAU circuit. A lot of times you'll see, the scouts out there, and your head coach for the AAU team will point him out. Be like, oh, this guy, I know this guy. He's kind of looking at you. They have you on your radar. But Lehigh was nowhere on my radar. But what was interesting was that at the time that I was getting recruited, Billy Taylor decided to move on to another school, and then Brett Reed came in.
Yep.
So it was this kind of transition period where, ironically, how they found out about me is that Billy Taylor actually had tape on me. And I guess the Matt Logie, the assistant coaches, when they were reviewing the tape, they had some scouts on, and they came across mine. They loved it, apparently. So they wanted to, fly out, check me out, watch a couple games at Archbishop Mitty. And next thing you know, like, things go well, and I get a scholarship. I think Matt Logie came over and, says, we want to offer you a scholarship. Official visit.
Did you take a visit out to campus?
All right. So, yes, I did. Short story, I did. But, me going on other official visits, to, like, Santa Barbara, where, the school was showing me, like, my future apartment overlooking the ocean, or Santa Clara being a hometown.
I've been to Pepperdine's campus, so I know what you're talking about. Malibu, man.
Yeah, Pepperdine's, their selling point was like, you wake up in the morning, you see Pamela Anderson swimming in her bikini in the pool. Great. Like, sign me up right away, right? But, yeah, Lehigh was like, yeah, we are in Bethlehem. I was like, what? Like, what? I thought there was only one
steel stacks and everything.
Yeah, I was blown away. I was like, all right, I'll go for it. I definitely want to have a scholarship. I definitely want, to have my parents avoid paying for me to go to school.
Sure.
Especially because they invested in me to go to a Catholic school. Took a chance on me. And I was like, this is my way of paying them back.
Did they at least put you with Ojo, a fellow Californian, for your visit? Who hosted you while you were there?
Okay, yeah, let's get into that part. So official visits are supposed to be like, wow, you're going to go party, you're going to hang out with the guys, you're going to get the full college experience. For whatever reason, my official visit was like a Sunday, Monday. So here I am on a Sunday night, riding up in the middle of the night not really the middle of the night, but it's pitch black. They had practice in Roush. Serious, my first day, coach is like, come on over, watch this practice. I see them practicing in Roush. I'm like, wait a minute, we're not even practicing in a regular gym. They were doing layup lines for an hour. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So I was like, all right, whatever. The guys are cool, but they're just doing layup lines for a long time, and Coach Reed's getting on their ass. So first off, I was like, this is like not really wowing me. And I was like, all right, well, let's see how the night goes. I'm excited to hang out with the guys. So after practice, Coach Reed's like, hey, go hang out with Marquise, Zaire. And I think Seamus was there, even Buckberger maybe. It was one of those two guys. Here they are, I'm just hanging out with the guys. They're in those really nice apartments, but they're not doing anything. They're like, yeah, it's Sunday. We just had practice. We got class tomorrow, so we're just going to sit around and just like watch some basketball and hang out. So I'm like, oh, man, like we're not going out anywhere. We're kind of just hanging in there. So, yeah, it was like a very interesting experience to like not have like that full-on like official visit experience.
They couldn't get you to Soto Santi for the Sunday karaoke for the baseball team?
I was just about to say, Kev, my first ever Sunday to Lehigh was a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about Lehigh being on Playboy's like top 10 party schools, and I'm like, all right, about to get after it, And then,
so what ultimately made you want to go there?
Really ultimately made me want to go there is, my mom. I love my mom, and she's a big influence in my life. And she's like, you know what, John? I know you sound like you didn't have a great experience tonight, but you know what? You're going to come out of there with a great education. Playing at a Division I program, this is really going to push you outside your comfort zone. I think you should go for it. And I trust my mom. She knows what's good for me a lot of times. So I was like, you know what? I hear you. I'm going to go for it. So called the coach. They offered me, they would love to offer you a scholarship. I had to think about it, talk to my mom. And I ultimately said, you know what? Sign me up. I'm ready to become a mountain hawk.
I like
That's kind of how it went down.
Did you have a tough time kind of balancing basketball with school at first? Because I know at William & Mary, I didn't do so hot, right? To kick off my college career grade-wise, I was curious other people had that kind of situation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Lehigh is a great school. And what's interesting about Lehigh, which I came in there with the wrong interpretation, is like you think you go to you're in a part of a sports program, you think, oh man, teachers are going to take it way easy. They understand where I'm coming from. They want athletics to do really well. Lehigh teachers don't give two shits about your schedule. So they don't care if you're on the road for 24 hours and you just got home at 2 a.m. and you have a paper due. They don't care. They're like, if you didn't turn it in or you didn't get to this test on time, forget about it. So that was a big challenge, just the lack of understanding from the teachers. And I think that was kind of a good thing in disguise because they really made you just push yourself beyond, a lot of people would expect an athlete to do. You had to not only hold yourself accountable on the court, but then you also hold yourself accountable off the court. And it really kind of pushed me to levels, I didn't really expect myself to get to. So I must give credit to Lehigh for, being no bullshit attitude about that, for sure.
Dude, I tell the people the story all the time. Literally, I had calculus and I had a baseball game, so I was unable to be in the class. And the professor, who was Chinese or Japanese of descent, was literally if you're not here, you get a 0. And I'm like, I have a signed paper from the athletic director that says I am excused and I need to be somewhere. And he was just like, no, not here, 0. And I had to go to the dean of the mathematics college to talk to the AD to make sure I wasn't full of shit, dude. It was insane. And I was like, how ridiculous is this? I'm just trying to play a varsity sport here. Can I get a reschedule of a test, please?
Dude, we had the same teacher, I think, because that dude was no bullshit.
Right.
He was like, you're not here, you don't have a paper, 0 tolerance. I was just like, oh my God.
Oh,
For
shit.
Sure. It's tough, sure.
Right, man, but you picked a great time to come in because, like we mentioned briefly in the intro, you left with 2 Patriot League championships and 2 appearances in March Madness. So I know your freshman year, you guys were kind of finding your footing, really coming together as a team, and then sophomore year, this lanky kid from Cleveland, Ohio, who on his visit was 5'6", and when he showed up was 5'10", named CJ McCollum, and can actually play a little bit of hoops. So take me through, if you saw him when he was on his visit. I know Ojo a few episodes back told a story about how he thought it was a completely different kid who showed up and he didn't remember the recruit. So was it take me through some sophomore year. That would have been CJ's freshman year, and kind of how you guys integrated, somebody of that skill set to ultimately advance and win the championship.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to take a step back. So into my freshman year, we are heading into the off season, kind of the summertime, right? And I think CJ comes in for his official visit, and I will never forget this dude coming in, right? This little guy, like you said, just over 6 feet, maybe weighs 100 pounds. This little guy, you're like, Coach Reed, really? This is our future? We're recruiting guys like this? Yeah, that was my first impression. But man, we had pickup at Taylor Gym one time. The traditional thing, guys play pickup with the recruit. And he was wearing these purple gym shorts and a white shirt. And I'm like, all right, these clothes are way too big for you. Dude, you need to this is going to be we're just going to have to murder this kid. We're going to push him around and kind of show him what it's about to be a Division I athlete. But he proved us all wrong so fast. He was a natural born scorer. I remember this dude was just dodging, weaving, cutting cross people over, fading away, and just scoring. I consider myself a pretty good defensive player, but he had me on I'm not gonna lie, he had me moving and guessing what I was supposed to be doing. He just had a knack to score. At first, like I said, I didn't think anything of it, but I remember this dude can play. It was to the point where he was just fooling people around, fooling on people, that I was I had to foul him real hard and be like, yo, quit it out. You can't do this. You know what I mean? Kind of show him, yo, you can't be doing that to us.
Hit him with that Pistons bully ball, right?
Yeah, exactly. Show him some muscle right here. But yeah, man, he was a talent, and that's one thing I do remember, that he was just scoring on people.
Did you have a moment throughout playing with him where you were like, this kid's going to be in the NBA?
When you play Patriot League players day in and day out, you're just thinking he only does well amongst his talent.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's hard to understand what his talent can mean amongst better players. And that really became a thing when we started playing Kansas. So, I mean, before we got to Kansas, fast forward, I guess, to, his freshman year, my sophomore year, he comes to campus, like, well, we signed CJ, and I was like, okay. First of all, he like grew like 3 inches. I'm like, whoa. Like, first of all, you're way taller than I thought you were. So he was like a legitimate guard, but he was still like, he barely weighed 100 pounds. He was wearing like, his skin tight undershirts and, trying to make it look a bit bigger. It was interesting because, he earned his way into the starting lineup real quick because, like I said, he was just a pure scorer. He was the type of guy that, he had an open shot, it went down. He would weave in and out of traffic, it went down. So he definitely became like an instrumental piece of our offense to the point that, you guys all know the story. He ended up winning Rookie of the Year. So him in combination with Zaire and Marquise, and Dave Buckberger and Matt Seamus, these guys, who were seniors, and CJ kind of running the show, they were like killing it, sophomore year, really getting us to the Patriot League championship where we played Lafayette, whooped that ass. Next thing you know, we're in the March Madness.
Take us through that. Take us through your first experience going from Bethlehem, beautiful Bethlehem, to down by Kansas, and you're playing in front of 15, 20,000 people now as opposed to the 4,000 that were just at Stabler for the Patriot League final.
That was crazy. So we're going to play where the Thunder, go play, and that's the first thing to think about. It's like, wow, Russell Westbrook plays here, James Harden plays here. I think Kevin Durant at the time, right, played there.
Yeah.
So you're like, holy smokes. So first of all, you get to the arena. We had like practice there, and it was massive, like massive. You're just thinking like, holy shit, like there's gonna be a shit ton of people here, just like going crazy. You're in the tournament. You see it on CBS, TNT all the time. You're just getting hyped. You could tell how hyped everybody was because we used to have this thing where we would all, like during like warm-ups for like layup lines, we would all dunk. And that was like, people would do it just to get, warmed up. But, man, we had the most crazy dunk layup line that practice before the game. People were so hyped. The coach was like, all right, we got to cut it out. You guys got to save some energy. But, yeah, it was crazy because, like, we're playing Kansas, like this crazy historical school who's just notorious for being, like, awesome at basketball. And I think at the time, right, they were number 1 seed. We knew we had a tough matchup because they had the Aldridge guy. They had, I forget their point guard at the time, but they were like a solid, solid group of guys. And then they had the Morris twins, which, I don't know if you know, but like the Morris twins played against Zaire back in Philly. So like Zaire had like some beef with them. So it was like a pretty big game for everybody because like number 1 versus 16, and like Zaire is trying to prove something to the Morris twins, and then it's like first chance that CJ got to be on the spotlight. So that was like a very interesting thing because it was during, March Madness playing against Kansas that we all came to realize how good CJ was because he was a sophomore, right? Sophomore playing against the number 1 seed, and he still weighs like 100 pounds, and he's just killing everybody, like scoring at will. I mean, we ultimately lost the game, right? But I will never forget, and everyone was like, whoa, like CJ McCollum, sophomore, 100 pounds, is giving Kansas the work. Everyone keep an eye out for him. And I think it was that time that not only did the team realize he had something special, but I think that's when the NBA started taking notice and overseas started taking notice. Like, we got to keep an eye on this guy.
Take me through junior year quickly, because now you've won the league. You got CJ coming back, so I'm assuming you guys are favorites now. What happened that year, and then we can get into senior year.
Yeah, so junior was a very interesting year because, like, we had such a strong senior class at the time. Like I said, we had Marquise Hall, who was, like, definitely Hall of Fame player. Lehigh, Zaire, Hall of Fame player. Buckberger, I think he was, like, a 1,000-point scorer. Seamus, like, instrumental leadership. Like, those guys were, like, so crucial to, the success we had my sophomore year. So it was junior year was a time where we needed to figure out who are the people that are going to step up. Like, CJ was, like, always going to be that guy. Gabe was kind of becoming into his role, because he was then a sophomore, right? Yeah. So it was like a transitional period. Like, we were definitely, like, I don't even say we were favored, but we were definitely, like, number 1 or 2. It was one of those years where, like, everyone was trying to figure out what their role was. I think we just had, like, a tough time really understanding, like, what was the role of each individual person. I think a lot of people felt like they needed to fill the void, maybe more than they probably could. So I think it was just a lot of those challenges from a playing perspective. So.
Sure. And if I remember, I think Bucknell and Mike Muscala, former NBA guy, didn't they win that year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, he was a problem. I think he won the Player of the Year that year too.
Yeah, so you have C.J.
like
McCollum and Mike Muscala, 3 straight years, Player of the Year, Conference Championship. So not a bad time to be playing ball in the Patriot League, man.
No, before then it was the guy from Colgate, Donald Floyd. Like that was the last time we had an NBA player in the Patriot League. And that was many, many years ago. But when we're playing, we got 2 NBA future players, so it was a great time to be in the Patriot League.
Absolutely. So going into senior year, obviously, like we just mentioned, it's going to be you and Bucknell yet again. Spoiler alert, that was the final, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So
that
ended up happening. But earlier in
right.
the year, Pags, I wanted to bring this up, John. Do you remember playing at William and Mary during the regular season your senior year?
Man, yeah, right.
That's right. An 82-57 win by the Mountain Hawks, Pags. I'm sure since you were such a good school spokesman, you were at the game, I can only imagine.
Oh, I was definitely not there. I don't remember that. I would have been there if it was Lehigh. It was probably over like December or something when I wasn't on campus.
We played at Liberty. It was like a tournament. It was like a 2K Classic.
Okay.
Liberty University.
Yeah, and they those fans are nuts. It's a Christian school, and they are so mean, but they don't curse. They don't say anything like that because they're just the nicest people ever. But they're just mean. They called my one buddy. He looked like he was a sock full of Jell-O. What? That was mean.
Just quality insults. But a few other highlights during the regular season there for you, John. You had a double-double against Lafayette. Obviously, fuck Lafayette. Standard right there.
Oh, yeah. Standard.
But and then I saw you hit a game winner against Army late in the year in overtime. Do you remember that shot?
Oh, yeah. That was a rare thing. So I remember that very clearly because it's always tough playing against Army. Those are scrappy guys. And they kept hanging in there, and I think they were, they ended up like taking the lead at the very end. And the reason why it's so memorable for me, because this rarely happens, is that the game was winding down, and the play call was for CJ to have a high ball screen, right, and for him to go downhill and try and make a play. I ended up setting the screen, and I ended up popping, and CJ, I think it's doubled, right? And normally in the game on the line, CJ's going to just get it up and give it its best shot. But like I said, it was a very rare thing. CJ passed the ball to me. He had a Kobe mentality. So he actually passed the ball to me, and I remember I just I'm going to just sink this. And I just threw it up there and just knocked it down. Yeah. Yeah. It was a sweet game. Yeah, that was actually a really great game, honestly. I think I had a couple dunks that game and a game winner. Yeah, that was a solid game.
Yeah, you had a strong senior season, finished by starting your last 10 games, which included the Patriot League tournament and then into the Duke game. So take us through kind of that experience, winning the league for the second time out of 3 years, ultimately your senior year. I'm sure that being a little emotional, going out on top. And then we can obviously get into, what everybody's waiting to hear, which is the experience of Lehigh Duke.
So my senior year was an interesting year. Yeah, it was my last time playing basketball. I was very, very aware of that the entire season. But at the same time, watching, the classmates above me, I understood what it took to get people there. Like I saw it before, and I knew what I needed to do as a senior to get there. And you kind of touched on this a second ago, where it was kind of like I kind of came into my stride heading into the postseason. But before the postseason, my team at Holden Griner was a starting four-man for us, pretty much the entire season. And basketball is one of those weird things where you have like one or two, maybe sometimes three guys in the same position, all fighting for playing time. And, me and him were scrapping it out in the postseason, but he ultimately, coach decided that, they wanted Holden to start for the season. Holden was doing great. Me and him would split some time, but he was ultimately the starter, and he would get more of the minutes. And being a senior, you would be like, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to kind of check out and, not really be a part of it because I want to get my minutes. But seeing the guys before me made me understand that you got to kind of be a little more selfless. So our entire senior class kind of adopted this mentality that everybody needs to just accept what their role is and be okay with it, and just make sure that, if you get that all the minutes in the game or none of the minutes in the game, that your role, whether it's cheering on the bench or during practice, you're getting after it, or if you're in the game, you're busting your ass and you're giving the team 100%. So I think that mentality, Also the fact that our senior class was probably a little more loose in terms of partying. We had people over all the time. We made sure that was kind of like a family mentality. I think made everybody feel like they were accepted for who they are. It didn't matter if they played a lot or played a little. So I think that was an instrumental piece into how we ultimately started playing towards the end of the year, because everybody was just understanding. No one got pissed off they weren't playing. Everyone was accepting of their role. And when everyone's accepted of the role, you're most efficient.
John, you're endorsing my teams that party together, win together. I love
Dude, it's a thing.
I
agree. I guarantee you start checking national champions, Villanova, without a doubt. They party together. You know what I mean? Like you got to understand who your teammates are and respect them and love them and just be like, you know what? At the end of the day, we're all in this together, and I don't care if I play or you play. Let's just win. So that was something that we felt we were doing really well. Like everybody knew their role, they were doing their thing. So towards the end of the postseason, Holden gets injured, and they tapped me to start playing, and I was more than ready. I ended up shooting really well from the 3-point line. I think I was like at one point in the top 20 or 10%. I think it was top 10 of Coach Kruger.
Well, I'll just drop the stat here. You were 61% from 3-point land in Patriot League play your senior year.
Yeah, so I was doing all right. I was like ready for my spot, step into that role. I think from that point on, we went on a really strong win streak, and it was also I guess my senior was a very special year because my entire time at Lehigh, we never beat Bucknell. Actually, no, I take that back. We beat them at home for the first time ever in my career, so that was a huge deal. As you know, we ended up having to play Bucknell in the championship game, where we beat them again. So the fact that we beat Bucknell twice at home that senior year was nuts. So I knew we had something special going on, and we were firing on all cylinders. So I knew that going into March Madness, like, we had something special.
Was there a team that you wanted more so than anybody else as you guys were sitting there on Selection Sunday? Kind of take me through that experience and, the selection show, because we all watch it, man. We see the teams on the TV celebrating and things. So were you guys excited when you found out it was Duke? Were you hoping it was Duke, or what was the feeling in the room?
It's a very good question. So I think a lot of us knew who would likely make it to the NCAA tournament, at least from the big schools. And I think a lot of us were, mentioning, like, Duke's probably going to be number 1 or number 2. And we're like, that's a good matchup. So here we are. I think we're at Hawks Nest, watching the reveal of the brackets.
Hell yeah, baby.
And then we see number 2 Duke will play Lehigh. It wasn't like a huge roar. It was kind of like the entire team was like, oh, yeah, we about to whoop that ass. Like, I kid you not. There was not like a scream of like, oh, my God, we're in the tournament. It was like, yeah, we're about to do work right now.
So what made you think that? Was it you guys had watched film at that point, or is it just the stigma of Duke, or what made you guys feel like that?
I think that we all knew that we matched up probably the best with that team out of any other team. And the fact that it's Duke. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, you want to get out. You want to take your best to Duke, legacy program. But at the same time, we knew that those guys, we could match up with them. And I think everyone just, like, when they saw it, they all knew who they would be going, and they all felt very comfortable and confident that they could just take it to them. It was just
on that Duke team.
At the time, it was Austin Rivers, Seth Curry, the Plumlee twins. Yeah, those guys. A lot of those guys are in the NBA.
So you guys ultimately are lined up. I'm assuming you're playing in Greensboro or their backyard. So the crowd there, was it 90-10 Duke ultimately when you guys show up? Take me through kind of those layup lines and if you guys were putting on a show there too.
Oh, yeah. So definitely the layup lines were ridiculous. Everyone's just like probably dunking, like jumping in out of the roof. The fans, if I recall correctly, there was like a good split of Duke and UNC fans.
Yeah, that's right.
UNC probably was there.
So that was the coolest part about it. Very big Lehigh fans. So I remember we got to the stadium, we were warming up, and you would see like the Lehigh section wearing their brown. But yeah, we would just see all these UNC fans, and they would just be, cheering us on when we would sub in, or cheering us on when they were calling our names. And we were like, oh man, like UNC's got our back. Like, we're in their backyard, and we want to be the UNC today. You know,
Sure.
we want to beat the UNC to beat Duke. So yeah, it was like really, really awesome to just have like this entire, you know, huge national fan base at this game rooting us on. In addition to Lehigh, that was a very cool thing.
So at what point during the game did you guys realistically kind of look at each other and be like, hey, this isn't a dream anymore. We can win this damn thing. I know we talked about it, but here it is right in front of us.
What was interesting about this game, and I think maybe it was just interesting to me, but I would imagine a lot of guys felt the same way, is that when we stepped on that court, it felt like any other game. Like, the idea of Duke became just letters. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, this is Mike Krzyzewski's team. Oh, we got Austin Rivers, you know, this phenom, apparently. It wasn't like we were playing this something greater. We were just playing a bunch of basketball players. And it was weird because I feel like everyone kind of just got lost in the game. Everyone knew what they needed to do. Everyone was playing their best basketball. I wouldn't say we were playing their best basketball. We were just playing our basketball game. You know, we knew that CJ was going to be, you know, instrumental to us. And as you guys know, he went off for 30, absolutely killing people. But I think everybody who came to the game made a huge impact one way or another. And I think that just Duke just didn't know what to do. You know, man, we were flying around playing defense. We were passing the ball, cutting the ball, making extra passes. And they were just like, what the hell's going on here? So, yeah, we were just giving them, you know, that Lehigh work for, you know, 3 quarters. And then you fast forward to the 4th quarter. And that's when I feel like probably halfway through the 4th quarter, I think people were like, oh, man, like, we got this. Like, we got this lead. Let's just hold on to it. And I think that's when it was like you became a little bit more aware of the situation. You started listening to the crowd a little bit more. And you started, like, thinking about what you're doing rather than just kind of playing. And I think it got a little close in the 4th quarter.
Sure.
But I will never forget when we started getting, I think it was like around a minute or 2 minutes left, we had a couple of out-of-bounds plays that we needed to run. And they were running a full-court press, you know, trying to just get the ball, maybe get a turnover. And you probably already know where I'm going with this, but I'll never forget getting, you know, them inbounding the ball. I think Mackey getting inbounding the ball. He was getting trapped, and they ended up passing to me on the corner. And I'm on the left-hand, you know, side of the basketball court, dribbling the ball. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm a 4-man with the ball with, like, limited time left. I don't want to fuck this up. And then Austin Rivers is right in front of me, and I would just never forget, just, like, get on that one crossover and then just, like, running down the court and just slamming it down. And the crowd just goes absolutely nuts. You know what I mean? Just like having that many people freaking going absolutely crazy for you and your team was like unreal. And I think after that dunk, I think we had a couple more dunks by Jordan and Gabe. And I think that's when it was like, we're about to just pull away with this game.
And that's when you blacked out and woke up 3 days later.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much, man. It was so surreal. And I think the craziest part about this is that when we won that game, you know, I think Norfolk State?
Norfolk State. I was just about to say, did you guys know that they were knocking off, what was it, Tennessee or somebody like that?
Yeah, I think we heard right on the way out that they had won, right? We're like, oh, man, good for them. Like, that's the first time that a 2 beat a, you know, 15, right, or something like that.
In a while.
And, yeah, in a long time. And then we're like, oh, man, like, I guess we got something to do, you know?
Take me through the locker room after the game. Take us through that experience of, you know, jubilation and ultimately kind of what was said, how you guys celebrated. Did you go out drinking that night? You know, take me through the post-game experience.
All right. So it's like tale of 2 stories. So everyone saw us, right? Kind of like win the game, you know, clap our hands and kind of be like real, like respectful and be like, yeah, we've been here, done that type of mentality. But we got back to that locker room. Boy, we were turning up. Like, everyone just got dancing around. You know, everyone had, like, I think people were getting, like, butt naked. I don't know why. This made no sense. But, like,
it's just what guys do, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I wasn't me. Don't look at me. I don't know that crazy. But people were just, like, just going crazy. Like, it was, I mean, well-deserved, right? We definitely earned it. People were, like, jumping around. Coaches were hugging. Like, dudes were, like, their phones were blowing up. Like, all these, like people were just getting calls from, like, their great, you know, aunts from, like, God knows where. I'm like, congratulations. People were just, like, going absolutely crazy. And they were like, all right, you need to hurry up and, get out of here because I guess the other team was probably come in or they just need to clean up. And we got on the bus. I had the opportunity to sit next to our police sheriff, or I guess sergeant, who kind of ran the police department at Lehigh. He actually came with us on the trip. And he was on the phone in the back, freaking out. And, I'm back there. I was like, yo, what's going on? They're like, yeah, so Lehigh is being burned down right now.
It sure as hell was.
Yeah, they were talking about how there's a fire on the president's, front lawn, how people are climbing posts. There's fires in the middle of East 5th Street. And I was like, yes, we finally put Lehigh on the map. People are going to recognize, what the brown and white is all about. And that was probably one of the coolest things in the world, to just know that we made an entire Lehigh Valley proud. That was probably one of the best feelings in the world, to know that that many people, were rooting for us across the world and felt proud more than ever to be a Mountain Hawk. So that was very cool.
So how do you get yourself? You're at the highest of highs, and you're like, okay, well, Sunday we got another game. I guess, how do you get in the right mindset of, all right, we got Xavier now?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just enjoy the rest of the night for sure. Coach is enjoy the rest of the night. Don't go too crazy. We definitely didn't go out drinking because we definitely had an agenda. We wanted to keep going at that point. So we were just kind of, enjoying ourselves back in hotel rooms, trying to answer as many text messages as possible. But then they told us the next morning, we got to go back down to the conference room and start reviewing film for Xavier. Because, they were a good team.
You guys had a chance to beat them, too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it's a crazy story, and I don't really know why or how this really happened. But they were up maybe 8 in the first half into halftime. So we had a pretty good lead against them, and we were playing good basketball. And for whatever reason, I don't think a lot of people know this, but we shot an NCAA low in field goal percentage in the second half. We couldn't you couldn't even put the ball in the hoop if you stood in front of it. It was ridiculous, to the point I don't even know what happened or how it happened or why it happened, but we were still in the game and we shot I want to say in the teens in terms of percentage. It was crazy. So it's crazy to think about. I think about it all the time. If we just shot at least 30%, maybe 40%, a low shooting percentage, we would have been on our way to the next round. So that was kind of that was one of the most sour tastes in my mouth, just to know that we were that close and we just had an awful game for God knows why. CJ had a terrible game. I think everyone just couldn't draw a rim. Yeah, we almost had that game. That was pretty disappointing to me, just knowing that we were that close and we just really just shot ourselves in the foot.
Well, you ended your career on a March Madness court in the round of 32, man. So you could definitely hold your head high and say you made it a hell of a lot further than a lot of other people. I had a stat here at the time when you guys, this was pre-UMBC over Virginia, so at that time there had only been 8 total upsets of 15s over 2s, which means 13 scholarship players on a team. You were one of, 105 or so individuals who had ever experienced what it was like for a 15 to beat a 2.
Yeah, 2 happened in the same day.
That was crazy. That was the coolest part about it. Just I think it is just the evolution of basketball, man. And I think a lot of people are seeing it. It's just people are just getting good no matter where you go. You know what I mean? And I think that's the most exciting piece about it. I love the tournament every single year. I'm sure you guys do too. It's just you just salivate when you see those brackets. You're like, oh man, who's going to be the guy that's going to upset the big dog this year? And I think that's cool to think about it because I was that underdog. I was part of a team that was that underdog. So I know it's almost like you know what to look for sometimes in those teams. Those teams that look like they just get along real well. They joke. They're real loose, but they just got a bunch of skilled players and get it done. And those are the guys you look for in the tournament because that was you. So that's really cool to just look at the March Madness every year and try to look for those teams to think about what team reminded you of yourself.
Definitely, man. And we'll wrap up our interview here. Again, we appreciate you taking the time out. But recently, we saw you back on campus, back at Lehigh after, 5, almost 10 years coming up here. You were on campus for the jersey retirement of C.J. McCollum. In my opinion, a few years overdue, but I don't know what the hell the rules are, if they got to wait 5 years or what is it. But take us through, that experience and how's CJ doing, and if you have any stories on CJ that you can share with the listeners that are funny or behind the scenes, and, we'll get you out of here after that.
First of all, it was very difficult to get to Lehigh. We had a long weekend of parting, with a lot of alumni coming back. So first of all, getting down there was real tough. But besides that, we want to make sure we get down there and support the guy, CJ. He helped us, get to, beating Duke. He was definitely instrumental in that piece. I think no one will disagree with that. So getting down there and watching him and have his jersey retired was, definitely something that we all look forward to, given, his contributions to Lehigh and Lehigh Valley. I must say, this dude, I don't know if you guys remember CJ, but CJ was the type of guy who should just wear baggy sweatpants, a T-shirt, a sweater, and then like this big furry hat. This guy's evolved big time. He was wearing a nice three-piece suit, some nice shoes, a nice watch. This guy was looking the part. Yeah, it was great to just watch him go out there, watch this video, celebrating his success at Lehigh, and then what he looks like now in the NBA. That was pretty cool. And just a testament to CJ. A lot of people don't really get to know him on a personal level, but CJ is probably one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. He'll clown on you for a little bit, just in all good fun. But at the end of the day, he's got your back. He's always got your family in mind or you in mind. And you could see that when he gave his speech during the ceremony, because he didn't really want to do this, but he ended up tearing up because he was just so thankful for, Lehigh giving him the opportunity. And he was just so thankful that, he's been given a chance to be in the position he is. So it's like nice to see guys who deserve it. So I think a lot of people don't realize that, but CJ is probably one of the most humble people. He's definitely he could be one of your best friends, and I couldn't think of anything better for him, getting his jersey retired. I agree. It was a little late.
Yeah, man, I remember the Uncle Eddie hat he used to wear all the time around campus that you're talking about for fucking Christmas vacation. But, hey, one story from CJ's college years. Do you remember anything for our listeners?
He would always be the clown. But I think it's not really funny, but I would just remember it's more of just like a testament to his work ethic. My senior year, even junior year, we would always be going out, and you would always get a text message from CJ. It's 9 o'clock on a Friday, and you're like 4 beers deep, right? And CJ's like, hey, you want to go to the gym and shoot? And we'd be like, fuck that. Like, we're getting after it.
It's Lafayette week, man. We got shit to do.
Yeah. He was just always out in the NBA. Yeah, I think that's why he's in the NBA, man.
Him and Rackley had similar work ethics, right?
He just couldn't put the ball down. But yeah, man, he was a hell of a player, man.
That's great. So we appreciate you joining, John. Like we mentioned, taking 45 minutes of your time here to share some of your experiences, your stories with our listeners. I know these guys are going to love it. That Lehigh Duke thing obviously comes up every March here, so really excited you could get on and share some of those experiences.
Yeah, man. Beat Duke.
John, thanks for taking the time again to come on here, man. We really appreciate it. We'll get you on here again in the near future. Hopefully you didn't mind it too much.
Of course, man. If you want to have me back about talking about anything else, I'm also here too.
Let's go. We'll get you on for some NBA chatter coming up closer to playoff time. You can be our Golden State Warriors expert.
Let's talk about LeBron not being the greatest player anymore.
Let's go. We're going to drop the hat on that one, baby. Cliffhanger.
That'll be good.
Oh,
right.
Shit. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Yep.